welcome to the participants as well as the panelists for this Drishti webinar on virtual schooling. I would like to welcome Ms. Revathi Srinivasan, our guest panelist. She, as you would all know, is the principal and director of Singhania School, Mumbai. I would also like to welcome our other guest, Mr. Francis Joseph. He is the founder and leads the School Leaders Network. Again, I'm sure that almost everyone here on this webinar is familiar with him. So a big welcome, Revathi and Francis, to our webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. You all have been old friends, colleagues, and therefore it's an absolute pleasure to have you and to discuss, today's topic in the current scenario that we are in. Okay, so let me start off immediately with that without wasting any time. Just want to also let you all know that we have almost more than 60% of our participants who are school teachers, and there are also school principals. So obviously there are people in the field who are looking to listen from you as to what are your thoughts, your comments on the current situation we are in, and very importantly, what we're going to do going forward. Yeah. So I'll just start off with taking the thread on from our little chat yesterday, Revathi. And, we were speaking about, what the situation in terms of virtual schooling is. And of course, Francis was sharing with us the work that he's, kind of rolled out in terms of 500 Catholic schools. And I think, Revathi, what you said was that, I think, that really stuck in my mind that, we can't really do virtual schooling in the same way that we do regular schooling. So I think let's just start off with those thoughts and, Francis, take it on from there, and then we'll take some questions from chat, etc. So Revathi, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. And it's indeed a pleasure to be here with friends, and a wonderful evening to all the participants here. I think it's beautiful that we are all meeting up just to discuss how we would like to take the year forward. That itself shows the collective responsibility that educators across the country are wanting to come together, collaborate, exchange ideas. And I think that's a very, very beautiful feeling. What the field of education really needs is collaboration. And I just wish it was not the pandemic that was making it happen. But anyway, it did happen. So I think that's what I'd like to begin with. I think teaching as such is very interesting. It's highly creative, as creative as any art, craft, or music can be. And therefore, I think every teacher has to take it on herself or himself to be a person who is able to create interest, create active listeners in class. And I really felt, and I still continue to drive home this point, that as teachers, we cannot teach the way we taught in a class. We're also used to the brick and the mortar. We're used to the fact that we stand in front and we are in complete and absolute control of the class. There's someone who is nudging somebody else even under the table, and you just can't make out, and you will call out, Akash, what's happening? But not anymore, because kids can be smarter than us. They can have the earphone on and can still be listening to music. So how do you engage them? That's more important. So I don't think as teachers, we have to start thinking of what are the kids going to be doing. That's not what it is. So I think first task for every teacher is to empower the students themselves. Don't begin the class with the do's and the don'ts. Okay, keep your microphone on mute. No need. Give them the freedom and let them learn to take their lessons with responsibility. Self-learning, self-directed learning, and the onus of learning should be on the children. It is very important that our classes become more contextualized. So if we can relate everything, and there has to be that human element, because unfortunately we are in front of screens. So neither the teacher is very comfortable with this, because the teacher also loves to have students in front, because she sees their expressions and accordingly changes what she wishes to say. So I think to have that human element missing is something that's not really right. But at the same time, can we create that in our classrooms? Can we use very human themes? Can we integrate that with our daily lives? And whatever we do, can we connect to the outside world? So everything that we teach, if we contextualize it, I think it goes very well. Reaching beyond boundaries, you can add on as many resources as possible. So inspire more of personalized teaching, so that every child feels that you as a teacher is coming across to me as a student. So I think that's another area. Complete balance of academics and non-academic activities is very important. And how do we use technology as a tool and not make it our master is very, very important. So encourage collaboration among students also by giving them group projects, and it is very easy to collaborate even when we are on an online class. So I think we need to give them that. Can we give them projects that are not downloadable? So nothing, they can only research on a topic or a theme, but they cannot write it down. So if we can start thinking very differently as teachers, I'm sure that it'll go a long way in helping a class becoming a class of active listeners, not passive ones. And also the fact that when they are actively involved, they're not going to be thinking in terms of how are they going to cause a disruption in class, or can they have some fun in class. And more than anything else, have loads of fun, because I think that's again another way of getting children pepped up when the classes are virtual.
Okay. So thanks, Francis.
Yeah. So I think I'm just taking one step back and just reminding everyone that we jumped into this virtual schooling somewhere in the second week of March, and it came like just like it came like a demonetization to us, right? Tuck. We get to know that we are all next day. We need to see how to run our schools. So I think, and the leadership was really tested at that moment. Schools were really tested at that moment, because the teachers, teachers didn't know what to do. The principals were wondering which app to select, what to do. So I think the way we have turned around right situation and we have actually quickly adapted to the changing environment is really worth appreciating. In this speed, right, we are just in the month of May, and in 2 months, I think many are driving the whole school in virtual schooling, right? There's no denial that the face-to-face teaching and the school teaching is the best and the most effective way. So I just want to clear that very clearly. We are all believers of children coming to school, spending time in the classroom, sharing their tiffins, enjoying, having fun, having group activities. No one denies that, right? But the situation is so delicate that we do not know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? Because there's no vaccine found. So when I talk to principals, many of them relate the end of lockdown to everything becoming normal, which is not, right? Even lockdown has to get extended, because we don't know what's going to happen next, right? So I think those kind of scenarios, we don't know till a vaccine is found what would really happen. So I think the time has come to look for ways to reach to every child, right? So initially, we started looking at different platforms. We looked at people who have got devices, students who have got data, students who don't have access. Trust me, a lot of schools have found strategies to reach to all types of kids, right? And in today's, in this time, when we talk about design thinking, we talk about artificial intelligence and all those kind of technology, which is already here, we can't talk about that we can't reach to every child. It's impossible. I think there's something missing if we say that, our children in the villages can't learn. No, I think devices have gone down. There is opportunity. If the community comes together, I've seen a lot of communities coming together and helping their children in villages to learn. So there are many innovative solutions which can actually come up to solve the scenario. Like, see, now I've got Shruti presenting. I can see all the activities which she's doing. But this is a part of the learning journey. I will not blame her because she's also learning, because maybe she's getting used to Google Meet. So something happened, right? But this is how the journey, everyone is learning. Every teacher is learning today, right? Every principal. And we don't know what is happening, what is going to happen in the next 1 month, right? So the way teachers, I've seen one thing, right? Like, I'm just adding to what Revathi was trying to say. The pedagogy which is applicable in the face-to-face teaching is very different from virtual teaching. Virtual teaching is almost like online tutoring. Like, it's very, very different. And online tutoring used to happen and still happens very actively in higher education. There are a lot of online tutoring companies which do, right? They take tuition classes sitting from US to Bombay, and that really happens. But it's a different skill set, right? Totally different skill set. Our teachers were not ready for it. So the first objective is to train them and equip them for this particular skill. I really appreciate certain governments, like I give an example of someone can't hear anything. Maybe you just move your headphone in some time due to the bandwidth, you'll hear, right? The voice comes to you at some point of time. Get used to this environment. So I think I really appreciate, when Dubai government, for example, when they closed the school, what they first did is they started getting into teacher training. Yeah. Okay. So when the first thing which the government in Dubai did is they got into teacher training. So I think, and then after 2 weeks, they opened the school to the students and parents. Now we have to understand, when virtual schooling happened, parent is actually in charge, right? We have given that kind of responsibility to a parent. So if you feel that you're just going to run the school because you've got the child in front of your, in front of your computer. Earlier, they were all in one big box. Now you have got in multiple boxes in front of your screen, and you feel that you have captured them inside the box. It is wrong, because there is a parent also moving. There is a family in that home. So I think the way to manage virtual education and virtual schooling is very, very, very different, because there is a parent factor, there is a family factor, and of course, children were used to video conferencing even before we got into it, right? So they know the knack, they know the pranks of virtual life, right? They don't know. They know when a teacher will ask something, they know, all right, teacher, the internet bandwidth is slow, my camera is gone. And we are like firm believers. Oh, wow, really? You should change your headphone. You should change your camera. But kids are, they're used to video conferencing. So I think we have got very smart children. Like Revathi said, we need to create that bonding, even in a face-to-face. When a child first came to us, it took us time for a bonding. And similarly here, I'm sure the kids, after all those pranks, they will settle down, and they will start getting used to the environment, and then they will start communicating to you very fairly. But if you become like a mute all kind of teacher, then they will not like you. Trust me. You can't come and say, come on, children. I was watching a video, and the teacher is taking a class, and she centers and says, come on, mute all, right? And then she will thud, go. She will remove people, and so classroom management skills teachers need a lot of training. Revathi, I'm sure you understand.
Yes, I understand.
In fact, if I may, Francis, when you spoke about this, so in fact, in the forthcoming, generally what we do is that once we do our weekly webinar, we usually follow it up with a workshop, a focused training workshop on a similar topic. And in fact, I'm doing a workshop on Monday on managing diversity in virtual classrooms. Okay. And in fact, that's why I wanted to, there are a couple of questions in the chat, Francis, which actually has to do with, how are we going to manage special needs students in virtual classrooms. So if I can just share a few thoughts on that. Yes. And so Sweetie and Fionica, I think you all are the ones who have asked these questions. And just to tell you that, in fact, that is one of the biggest thrusts of our workshop on Monday, apart from, general management of virtual classrooms also. So with special needs children, I think the core mantra, okay, with them is going to be that we need to be dealing with this virtual schooling, I believe, for all children in the first place, and then, of course, with special needs students. The core word is flexibility. Okay, we can't expect that all the time that the classroom that has been set down, the classroom timings that have been set down for all the children is going to be attended as usual by children with special education needs, whether it is learning difficulties, whether it is autism, whether it is just behavior difficulties. These are the children who have some specific, special educational needs. And these, right now, because just like Francis said, we're all grappling with the new scenario, the new channels. Managing special education needs, one is going to need flexibility, flexibility of time, flexibility of curricular expectations, and perhaps a little more input from the teacher, where she might have to reach out at a different time. I'm not saying that she would have to reach out to individual kids with issues, but she can probably form small groups, okay? And with these children, rather than just delivery of content, okay, I think what the focus in these next couple of months while we are on this has to be to give priority to, you know, your relationships with these children. That's one. And perhaps to turn your content into activities, okay? With these kids, it's going to be activity-based learning. And again, I come back to what Francis said. The home is now a part of the school. The parents are now a part of the school for whatever, for the next 2 months, 3 months, 6 months that we are in this scenario. So I think it's important to build the relationships with the parent, with the child, turn this over into activities, and practice flexibility, because right now that's the best way to go forward. So that's my thoughts on the special needs. If there are particular other questions coming up, you know, you can still do that. So
I
yeah.
wanted
Yes,
to add
Drishti.
something. I think teachers use a lot of visuals and auditory and experiential learning component while they are, and there are strategies that they're using to make learning more effective. But for these special children, sometimes it may not be appealing, especially if there are too many colors, too many graphics and stuffs like that. So
Right.
the teachers' lesson plans must also be tailor-made to suit the needs of the other children as well, with the special children, children with difficulties in learning or disabilities in learning. And of course, I think it's also very important for every teacher to become a counselor. That's going to be the need of the hour, and every teacher has to be a counselor who can counsel children, because there are so many. It's not just about with special needs children, but also where I've seen is that children who are going into an anxiety mode, standard 10 children, how do we complete the portions in 6.5, 7 months? Standard 12 students, my God, I've applied for a university abroad, and I thought this year by fall, I would be abroad. Now I can't go. My parents don't want me to go. I want to go, but my parents don't want me to go. Now, these are things that they have all come at crossroads. And I think it's so important for all of us to be talking to children all the time. So it's now going to become a paramount importance that each one of us talk to our children and open their minds to newer avenues.
So I'm so glad. Sorry.
I just
So I'm so glad you brought this up, Revathi, because these counseling skills for teachers, that is going to be a part of this workshop that we are doing. And Francis, I think that's something also, like, when I did that partnership building with your BMC teachers, right? And I think that's one of the things that I also brought up, that our children are going to need teachers to be frontline counselors.
Yeah.
And that's something.
I think especially these kind of children, right? These so specially blessed children, they are sitting in the best of best environment right now for learning, which is their home environment. Right?
Yes.
I think there is no other bigger opportunity for that child to prosper. It can't
Absolutely.
be. I mean, a child coming to a school is actually a little more stressed, because every time he gets a new face in front of him. Here, he's got his parent, he's got his own. It's like his own kingdom, right? And I think there's an opportunity time for all of us to see how these children can actually learn much better. And I think it would be more effective, right? Provided the parent retains that environment and also spends some time, and the connect between a teacher and a parent and a student is superb in this time, right? I really feel that the education system should have mandatory some number of days as mandate, right, where a parent, teacher, and student actually only spends together in education. I think that's a dream. Some point of time we should make a compulsory lockdown for all schools, not to come to school, spend one day online with your parents. I'm just adding one thought.
Right, right. And, Revathi, if you can also share with us, yesterday also we were talking about some specific measures that very fortunately took before, the kind of, we really went into the throes of this lockdown, how you were already doing a few things. I found that very interesting. And I think it would be also interesting for the participants to listen and take home some messages, So how you had already planned on some things, how the teachers, were planning their assessments, that kind of stuff was very, I think, interesting. So
I think
I don't know.
what we did was we were already having a lot of technology embedded classrooms, not by the way of smart boards. Let me tell you that also. I am one person who believes that we have to create our own content, and the content that I have for my class can be different from that of the other class in the section, because it's always, teaching should always be by the way of, and the pedagogy should be by the way of the needs of the children, and that needs to be addressed. Having said that, what we have been doing, we've been having online assessments for a while now, almost 12 years now since my online exams have started. So we've been doing that very successfully. So one part of the examinations, and major examination, is online completely. This year, we also tried out the subjective examination online. So that also worked out well with the software, the help of a software. Now, but yet, we always have this feeling that did the kids refer to their books? So it's very important when we are setting up online assessments to see that the questions are not direct questions. Questions are, the answers appear, if it's an MCQ, then answers appear almost the same. And so therefore, there's an element of confusion. Can we set a time limit of less than what we can, what they really need, so that they are able to work faster and they don't do referencing? Because this is a question that many teachers ask me, ma'am, but if they do it at home, they will copy. This is the general feeling that teachers do have. And my answer to this, for many teachers who may ask this question, is that at least they will read when they want to copy. That's my answer. So if they read, at least at that moment of time, I think I'm happy about it. And it's not necessary that you have to just take one examination that decides their future. So if you average up a whole lot of assessments, everything gets averaged. And even if the child had copied somewhere, it doesn't make a difference. Having said that, the next part of it that I'd like to do is creating sessions inside the classroom. So we created an app almost 1.5 years back, an app that had all the learning solutions, the video lessons of all the teachers. My idea was this, then it was called Quest. My idea was this, that if a child is absent or missing, and those were the days when the dengue was on and a lot of kids would be unwell. That's how this whole idea came up, that parents started writing, ma'am, my child was away for 15 days and how do I cope? So we got this app done so that the children who missed classes could refer to that and come back to what they were doing. The second, that we thought that whenever there are vacations, children can go and revisit it. Idea of learning is that every day they could, in case they didn't understand what they did in school, they could go back home and refresh themselves with the lessons that was done by their own teacher. So everything, and it was shot in a studio. So I think by the way of the kind of noises outside, that wasn't there, the disturbances weren't there. So that was wonderful. And the students used it brilliantly. So I think that was one way for me to think about ways by which we can introduce more. So I actually got almost about 75 of my teachers trained for instructional design, so that they know exactly how to plan. And I really didn't know there would be a disruption of this kind, but sometime around December, January, we started the training. And that's helped us now because we were able to make our lesson plans faster when it became a virtual classroom. So that was one. And the second was that as soon as the schools were closed on March 16th, we put our teachers out for training so that everyone and every 10 to 12 teachers had one mentor teacher. So that that mentor teacher was a person who had already tried a lot of technology, and she's quite tech savvy person. So she was there to answer queries, answer questions. And generally I chose the mentor where they have their own comfort zones. Teachers do have their own comfort levels, so we chose teachers like that, so that even the minutest of things they could ask. For example, I don't know how to do this. That was perfectly all right to ask. कहाँ से आवाज आ रही है? This is what my Hindi or Marathi teacher would say. किसको करना है? वो 4 buttons हैं, वहाँ पे दबाना है क्या? I wanted them to even ask those kind of questions and not feel shy. So that way they were sort of prepared for it.
Right. Thank you. Francis?
Muted.
Okay, I'm in fact going to answer, there was a question by Viva. Viva asked whether we can have modified learning goals integrated in general school curriculum. And so Viva, in fact, I was going to, kind of add this on to what Revathi was saying. And that is that, we have been talking about differentiated learning, and people kind of are not very sure what this is also all about. There are people who say we know it, but then they don't really know how to execute this. And so differentiated learning, just to let you know, is a method, is an approach which helps to provide access to all students in the classroom by having, the same learning goals, but modified in terms of complexity, in terms of how we are going to execute it. So even the way we introduce a chapter will be different, in different ways, so that if you introduce it in the simplest way, you can then kind of, ramp it up to the more complex. And thus you have children who are, having their learning difficulties, etc., also understanding this. So you're going to be adding the audio, the visual, all of this, so that everyone tends to understand it. And it is believed, research evidence says, that if you actually, provide learning opportunities, which is starting at the simplest level of understanding, that is in fact one of your best practices of teaching. Okay, so I think this is something which was there and supposed to be in regular classes, and I think all the more the need even now. So I hope to have in some way answered answered that question of yours. And I think one question, Revathi, for you was, which app did you use? So I think if you can just put that on chat, Revathi, I think that will take care of that. And, I think there's some other nice questions, Francis. How about overstimulation from too much screen time? Francis, why don't you go for that one? What about overstimulation from screen time, Francis? Francis, are you muted by any chance?
I think he's muted as I can see him.
Oh, he must be having some internet problems. Okay, so let's take this question.
I think I'd like to take this.
Yes, please, Revathi. Yes, absolutely.
What I feel, I'm also of the very personal opinion that you shouldn't give kids too much of screen time. So what one needs to be doing is plan our lessons accordingly. We have the whole day. So we could space that out a lot more. For example, I believe strongly that not more than 4 hours for senior students and not more than 3 hours for junior children. And
great.
This is how I see. And it's not about completing the syllabus. There, Francis is.
Yeah, I'm there. I'm listening. Please carry on.
Just continue.
Yeah, please continue.
Okay. So I was answering your question, Francis.
Yeah.
Okay.
Technology.
Yes. So
Yeah.
I strongly believe that if you give those kids an understanding, and that's why I said the role of the teacher. We've been talking about how do we redesign our curriculum and how do we recreate our curriculum. This is the moment. In fact, let me honestly admit, as a director of all the Singhania schools, I'm planning for 5 schools at the same time. The one thing that I'm really feeling at this moment, and for the past 2 months I was feeling, is that I'm starting a new school on a clean slate. I don't have any resources, by the way, of the academic resources or pedagogy in front of me. How do I roll out a class? That's exactly the feeling. And every morning I get up feeling that, oh, I have to build a new school. Okay, and I'm going to get a new set of teachers, and I'm going to get new set of resources. How am I going to be making use of these to get that? And I think if that happens and you start redesigning and recreating, you rethink, that's the way the process goes on. And I think if you really work on, not on the syllabus, not on the number of chapters you have to complete during this year, but work on the curriculum component that deals with conceptual understanding, no, I think it will work really well.
And if I can just add in over here, I think this is a good time, don't you think, Revathi, for us to be actually encouraging and operationalizing critical thinking.
Absolutely.
I think, rather than just sticking to content, I think one of the biggest thing our students struggle with when they travel out of the country for their studies is application and critical thinking. That's what their first 1 and 2 semesters just go, because I don't think we do that. Although I think we absolutely have fantastic potential to do it. But I think if that's encouraged, like you said, building a new school, can we encourage critical thinking at this time where we can be a little more flexible in our entire approach,
Right.
So, and there was a very good question for either of you, that is that, what should be the number of students in this virtual classroom? Because more than 50 children, it becomes very difficult. I would say more than 20 also. I don't know how.
Right.
So any thoughts, Francis?
Yeah, so I think in technology, that is the best thing, right? You can have multiple, you can divide, there's no space issue, right?
Right.
Even if it's a Bombay or any other big city, you can create multiple classrooms. I think schools should just make class sizes smaller. It is possible in technology, right?
Absolutely.
You can have multiple meetup rooms and, you can break down the class. So I think if schools are thinking of running the school the way they are running face-to-face, change all the structures. You cannot run in the same structure because you're not going to be using technology then. You're not using the power of technology. I think, so you can have multiple meetups.
Francis, give them some example of how they would be able
to... For example, in the BMC school, for example, the training which he did, I just want to give you one example. There were like around 30 teachers, right?
Yeah.
What we did is we broke that into 3 different meetups, right? And they were actually moved into different 3 rooms, right?
Okay.
And everyone was given a discussion to talk about. So we actually could create groups inside a single meetup, right? So there is one meetup room A, which has got 10 teachers who are discussing on one topic. We move the other 10 into another meetup. So that's how you create small mini classrooms.
But then you had the same facilitator, is it? Same facilitator for all the 3?
They kept on discussing, the person was moving. It was not difficult, right? Because once a teacher is mastering on it, she can actually break on classes, at least for group activities. Because many times...
Francis, we're talking about adult learners, right? The teachers might be concerned.
No. In schools, there are plenty of schools using the strategy. How do you do group activities? In a class of 40, even in virtual schooling, how you will do? You can't talk to 40 children. You will have to break classes. So you have multiple rooms to break it. So anything is possible. So whatever higher education we're doing, children can do much faster. We are underestimating their power. They are much better than adults sitting in higher education. Let me tell you, this 1 year of virtual schooling, you'll be amazed the kids, the way they will go ahead. It's amazing. It's going to be really amazing. Yeah. So
okay. And should parents be trained to act as a shadow teacher?
So they they are the original teacher in my view, and we are now, with their permission, we are using them actively in their child's development. There's no bigger opportunity. I come back to that same thing. I'm sure Revathi would like to add more value.
Yeah, Revathi, why don't you let us, if you can just put your thoughts on, what should be the role of parents considering this scenario? What is the extent to which, how best, how most respectfully can we have this kind of a partnership? I think that's really important.
I think this is the most, I think it's a golden opportunity for all of us to realize that neither the school and parents are all sitting around a table. It's a round table. We can't sit across the table. We have the child in the center. And therefore, it's very important for parents to join hands with schools. On the one hand, I would want schools to support parents in understanding how to go about supporting their children. Supporting the children doesn't mean you have to sit with your children all day long and say, is this over? Have you done this? Have you studied this? Have you studied that? Okay, now I'm going to ask you questions in the end. I'm going to set a worksheet like your teacher does. That's not support. Children don't need that kind of support, and that's hand-holding, and children don't need that kind of hand-holding at all. So I think what they need to be doing is giving them the stimulus, the right kind of environment for learning, and that's what parents can do. What teachers can do, for example, would be to give projects where there's a lot of discussion that can happen at home. So, even for a little child, understanding the family tree is a big, it's when you do an essay or you take a theme when you're learning. We have theme-based learning, so I can give an example from there. And I'm taking me as a theme. Understanding the family tree itself is a big thing. How do I know my family without asking my parents? And parents, grandparents, yes, they will know, and great-grandparents, they may know. So they will also talk to their parents, that means the grandparents, in order to find out who are the ancestors. So I think that's the way the stimulus for understanding family, the values in the family. This is the best time for us to sit down, talk about what's happened, how did we grow up, talk about even difficulties that parents faced. We don't talk about our difficulties to our children at all. And that's the reason why they grow up thinking everything arrives on a platter and everything can be taken. This is the time to talk to children about minimalism without preaching about minimalism. We can talk in terms of how you can have higher thoughts. You don't have to necessarily have the best of things around you. And all of this without preaching. That's what I like, because you don't need to preach about all these. No kid is prepared to listen to you. Neither are we. So I think the patience levels on both sides is not very high. So I think it's so important for us to make use of this, talk about little incidents that we had, pleasures, simple pleasures that we had. This will help children to write stories, write essays. How do we teach our children to write good essays? And this is a time that we can use. So they may be writing or studying in a school, if I can say the virtual school, for 3 hours or 4 hours. What do they do for the rest of the time? They write their own thoughts, reflections on many things. So many things that we can. And I always believe that teach our children to write using all our 5 sense organs. And when you learn to write your essay, your story just comes alive. And when it comes alive, and that's how we like to read stories. Okay, when we read a Sudha Murthy, for example, or an R.K. Narayan, we actually get to feel, not that we lived in Malgudi, but we still get to feel it. So these are the ideas that parents can do, support the school that way. All the other things are very minor. For me, the administrative things that we are talking about, this is not the time for all of that. The parents have to support schools, and schools will give as much input as possible to parents so that they can help to support the children. So
Revathi, there's one question which I think, something I think coming from you would be very useful. And that is a question from Padma Kumar. Can you also share something about a step-down approach for a child with, say, learning difficulties or any kind of, more cognitive difficulties? She said slow learner, but we don't use the term slow learner anymore. But, I understand what she means. And that is any kind of, difficulties with learning, and the child really is, finding it difficult to cope. what as a school, as teachers, can you particularly do, to kind of get this down? I mean, to cut down on the curriculum.
First of all, is the lesson planning that needs to be done that caters to the needs of almost every child. So you have a mixed learning group in your class, and all people have got different styles of learning. A teacher must first know her class. And now, when you are having a class of 20, it's so easy to understand what are the needs of the children. So you can tailor make your curriculum in a manner that will help every child come up. For children with where they don't learn fast or they don't understand, a lot more of practice exercises are required. We can spend maybe an hour in the afternoon, and again, as Smita rightly said, club children together with the similar kind of difficulties, and you can do some sessions in the afternoon.
A small group session.
Yes. So it's a very small group session, and do it only for half an hour, and the rest of the half an hour they actually go about doing their work, And I think too much of content, by the way of content, I think is really not good. I would like it to be a lot more of fun element. There is some game element. So especially designing such lessons are important. Giving feedback to children is very important. Where you think they lack, I mean, that's important, whether it is an academically brilliant child or not, because that and too much of text-based courses should be avoided. Some people, even for their PowerPoint presentations, will have lines written across, and so the keyword is lost completely, and I really don't know what to pick. So what do kids do? They tend to write the whole thing like that. So without understanding what it is. So I think that's something that one has to keep in mind. For children who are having difficulties, they need to read the text aloud. There is a software that you can use which helps children to read aloud. Okay, and that software, I think, if I'm right, it's called Read Please. Okay, so you can use that software. Then that children read. It reads out to the children. So something like that can be thought about. In fact, if you I'm researching, so I'm still a learner myself, and I will admit that. So I'm not that I'm complete and expert in it, but every day morning when I get up, when I start Googling to find out what are the new softwares, what can it help me, and where it can help me, you get so much of resources. I'm sure Francis will share that also. He has got lots of stories on that as well.
I just
Francis,
Francis,
there's another good question on, how long do you think the duration of these virtual classrooms should be? Because, face-to-face classrooms used to be just 45 minutes and all of that. So good question to take that on,
Yeah, so when virtual schooling started, right, a lot of school went on to almost like replicating the school number of working hours, right? And even before India started, because I'm very active on Twitter, so I used to follow a lot of people, educators and leaders back in countries where school closures started, right? So they also went into that mode, right? So, and over time, and they were a little bit ahead of us, because there was like schools which are closed in Feb, we all closed in March. So they were one month ahead, and plus they were a little bit better in technology than us. They quickly learned that restricting on the number of hours is crucial, not only for the student, but also for the teacher, right?
Sure.
Because there is more preparation required for the teacher. We sometimes just think about the student, we forget about the life of the teacher. She's sitting in a lockdown, she's got a family to take care. We just think, no, we are paying her salary, so she has to do all of us. So I remember even during lockdown, a lot of teachers were actually called to schools where children were sitting at home, and they were made to do classes, right? So anyway, so I think number of hours should
Francis,
not be...
I'll just interrupt 1 minute and just tell all the participants, with of course the permission of the panelists, that we'll continue for another 15 minutes. Yeah, right till 6 p.m. I hope that's okay with you also, Revathi?
Yeah, fine. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, fine. So we'll continue till 6 p.m. Thank you. Yes, Francis, please continue.
I think it has to be limited. I mean, the younger kids need to have lesser time. We are worried about not only about screen time, I'm equally worried about cyber security, right? And schools have a huge responsibility there. I mean, if school says that I'm worried about cyber, they need to look at the settings, they need to do some research. before they get into it. Like Revathi was sharing about Googling and doing research, I would advise you to start following a lot of leaders and school heads and educators via Twitter, right? It's so powerful. There are so many special educators on Twitter. The kind of strategies they share, you will not get it anywhere, trust me. And they share it. So someone was talking about collaborating here. This is the time to collaborate. So there are many, if you have to just go to Twitter and say teacher, special educator, you might find many who have put in their profile that they are a special educator. Start following them randomly. And trust me, the kind of strategies you would get are mind blowing, right? Because they've experimented and they've got some research when they actually do that. So I think teachers now in virtual schooling have to be good researchers, right? They can't just sit thinking that I've done my classroom and I've done. And secondly, virtual school will be a failure if you do not involve the parents. Trust me, it will not sustain. It will be a super failure without the parent engagement. So when work from home stops and when the parent actually goes back to office, I'm really worried what is going to happen. Because without a parent, yeah.
So Francis, what we're looking at, I mean, I'm just answering that same question that, what's a good duration, I mean, like a 30 minutes or, what? I mean, Revathi, even your inputs on this would be good. What's a good time to sustain attention of the child? I think that's what I would be most concerned about.
Like she said,
like a total of 2 hours.
Like she said, 3 hours she's doing for, right, for pre-primary, even for adults.
Pre-primary, it's for the primary.
Primary. And there's a question here, very, very, I think this question has been repeated by different people. And that is, how much, I mean, first of all, I would ask the question, should we have these online classes for the 3 to 6 year olds? And if we do, then what is the kind of every class duration, like a 20 minutes, a 30 minutes? Because then one can do one's lesson planning, etc., when one takes that kind of duration into account. So I think it's a good idea to just, right now give this kind of a response, because I hear this a lot, about the young ones.
If I think this year is going to be a big challenging year for preschools and daycare.
Yes.
It's going to be a huge challenge.
Right.
And because the parents should also have their confidence of sending their children to a place outside. The parents should have a confidence of making their child sitting in front of the screen. But I think limiting the number of, like you mentioned, 20 minutes, half an hour, but giving them more of activities to do at home along with the parents is the way out. You have to give them enough activities to do. You're using your eyes and ears. What about your hands? Education is incomplete without hands. So I think everywhere in virtual schooling, the hand has to come in. And I'm sure EdTech companies will bring, using technologies, the use of hand at some point of time to all these kind of apps which are coming in, right? Because they are very smart. They are actually learning much faster. So maybe an AI technology might be so that kids can actually do some activities and actually it can be related to your video app which gets transferred to your classroom. It's not impossible, right? The world can really move fast. Revathi, you want to add something?
I just wanted to share this because it's not about adding on to something, but I had a talk with my own students, senior students of my school, and I asked them what they expect of the classes ahead. And what they really said, and I really loved the way they spoke so spontaneously because it was an impromptu talk. And one thing that they all said that they do appreciate the way every teacher really strives to make the class more interesting. We've seen the same teacher in our classroom. We're seeing the teacher now. She's trying to use so many tech tools, to make the class interesting so that she can hold. I think that appreciation is the first thing that we all must acknowledge coming in from our children. The second that they said is that it's all right to have 40 minutes class, but allow us the movement, because it's very difficult for us to stay on in one place. So the way I have designed is what I can share with so that it may be helpful for teachers. 20 minutes of actual teaching and 20 minutes of activity or whatever that you would like to do as a project or some experiential learning component, that kind of a thing, but not more than 40 minutes.
And there's another couple of other very good questions which we can kind of roll into one. And that is that, can't an inclusive educator collaborate while planning lessons that will help teachers also plan better for all children? And can you also please suggest some strategies of blended learning for the primary level students? So I think as far as the first part is concerned, Revathi, I think I think it's really important, isn't it, that your specialists also contribute to how lesson planning gets done. I don't know if that is happening, but I think that's really the way ahead. So thanks, Vibha, for bringing that up. And Revathi, if you can, can tell us a little bit about what are your thoughts on this blended learning for the primary level students. Are you doing that? How can we do it better? Stuff like that.
So yes. See, blended learning is there to stay. So let's just first accept it, because we're not going to be constantly thinking in terms of only the virtual classroom. So it is going to be a very blended system. So preparing for what you rightly said was a flexibility of an educational system is what is really important, be it the parent, be it the child, or be it the teacher. I think all of us have to be really prepared for any kind of flexibility that can come in. We may be in the class, but even then you have to follow so many systems. For example, social distancing. You will not have your own classmates all the time in your class. You may think of an alternate day system. You may think about a shift system. So all of this is really going to be, and actually, as Francis rightly said, we really don't know how it's going to roll out. Okay. Now it's like, that's what I said, it's like planning a new school. So unless we see it all coming up, perhaps on the job, we will really know how it will work better and not. But working both ways is very important. So when you're making your lesson plans, make sure that this lesson plan is one which you're doing for online, but you also need a standby in a standby mode, another lesson plan that you will do when your children come back to class.
So Revathi and Francis, I just wanted to share my just one thought with both of you, and maybe, I don't know if we can all talk about that. I just feel that since we've gone into this online mode, suddenly everyone seems to be, kind of working twice the number of hours, or at least 40 and 50% more. And I feel we're in this sudden race, to kind of achieve everything that we were doing in school, and we've got to put it into a new mode, and we've just got to do everything 100%. We've got to do everything perfectly. And then what I'm listening to are the stress levels. The stress levels, obviously, teachers, parents, and that is obviously getting projected to the kids. I mean, what is the stand that we should very critically think about and take? Because, I mean, we're all people who can think for ourselves. And I think we should be able to immediately reflect when we have so much information coming from others. What should we do about this crazy race that we're all trying to run?
So I think everyone is running, right? And the worry is we are running when anxiety levels are already so high, right? We are already so much worried about the virus, the vaccine, the next street has got the virus. Absolutely. And then, yes, sit in front of the screen. My family says, come on, buy these essentials. This person has come. There is suddenly a milkman coming. Oh, God, he's entered the building. Imagine the condition. I was seeing the pictures of these children appearing in Kerala, the 10th standard examination. It's like going for a war. I mean, they are all, I saw that picture. They're all standing with masks. Already exam was so stressful. We just added more stress to it. And now they are waiting at a distance, wearing a mask, sanitizer, and whatnot. I mean, I think the system needs a total revamp. I think this is the best opportunity to look at examinations. Revamp examinations totally.
How can we take it up? Revathi, Francis, how can we take it up?
I think every school has to start redesigning it, keeping in mind the needs. And I 100% agree with Francis. I have changed my assessment patterns. Let me tell you that. Okay. I have scrapped any assignments or assessments at this moment of time, because there's no need to add to problems that are already existing. Okay. Having said that, let me also tell you the other side and how I'm seeing it. I just want people to find peace within themselves.
Yeah, okay? Absolutely.
At this moment.
And I think the world right now, or what's happening in the environment, I mean, apart from the scary part, but for you and me who are sitting home, for the children who are having schooling, I think this is an opportunity for us to just pause,
Yes.
just
Reflect.
pause, reflect, and probably reset,
Yes.
But I think it's going to be individual and group leaders who are going to take this forward, because as leadership, as thinking individuals, if we are going to kind of, just fast forward this race, it's not going to be helping. And like Francis so rightly said, out there is one of the, I mean, we've never seen this kind of a health situation in our lives before. We're already dealing with that physically and cognitively, psychologically. And then we've got this race that, I mean, I'm saying, okay, let's say the situation continues for 6 months and we do not study academically as much as we had to for 6 months. I mean, what is going to be the big loss in our lives?
Can I just add?
I would,
Yes, Francis.
I want to say that we always say we are going to the new normal, but we always try to be in the normal, right? We always want to do things how we used to do while saying that we are in the new normal. That's a total disconnect. I don't call it new normal. I say it's abnormal, right? And it's totally abnormal the way we are, and we are looking at all processes, right? So exam has to be over. Okay, it has to be over.
Yes.
We have to move away from these kind of processes.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know how. I mean, we are talking at one length that everything has to be stress-free, education has to be 21st century stress, and then I see this picture of everyone waiting in a line with mask and waiting to go for an examination. So I think it is totally disconnected. We are expecting a national education policy talking about stress level reducing. But we have to look into this. Tomorrow, this year it is Corona. God knows what is going to come up next year.
Yes.
Blended learning should never stop. Now, if it is 100% and 0% school, it will increase to 50-50. At the end, even if we find a vaccine, we have to be 90-10. Keep the online element always going, because you don't know whether there is a Dorona or a Farona coming next year. You don't know, right? We have to have the capability to switch and build access to every children, even for special needs kids. And there are several apps and there are several tech apps and technologies there where you can reach to those kids. You should do some research. And I think, Smita, I would recommend, if you have some people actually researching on apps and tools which help these kids, you will find so many resources and which you can share to your team, I think that effort will be a good effort.
Yeah, I think it's also time for principals, school leaders to become visionaries.
Yeah.
They have to think and be prepared for every disruption. In fact, I would also like to add on to one thing that Francis and you, Smita, said, that teachers are also like doing so many courses on Coursera, as if to say that, that we have to do in so much more. You have to pack in as much as you can.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think, and I would advise teachers, especially young teachers, please relax. This is the time to reflect. Okay, how do you better yourself as a teacher? How do you become a more connected teacher? These are the things that you have to look into. See ways by which you can connect better and make your lessons more interesting and be the super teacher that you would want to be. I think that's now more important, because everybody seems to think that, oh, I'm just sitting at home. It's not I'm sitting at home. We need this time. We need this time to do so much of reflection within ourselves, introspection of what we have been doing. Are we doing the same teaching for the past 10 years and say that we have 10 years of experience? That means it's 1 year of experience repeated 10 times. Or do we have to start saying, I've done what I did, but let me start a new experience?
And so, Revathi, thank you for that. And I think I will take... yes, Francis.
I just wanted to add one point.
Yes, please.
Emotional distancing is happening everywhere, right? And I mean, I was giving an example of, even when you see people walking on the street, you see the kind of, suddenly if you have 3-4 children running to them, you should see the expression, right?
Yes, the fear.
As if something is going to really happen, as if some person is coming with something dangerous. I think that is increasing, right? Emotional. So I think that pattern will remain for some time. Virtual schooling also, there is a distancing happening. So I don't know when we get back to normal and when we get back to our schools, how this impact of emotional distancing, which we have created in this 3, 4, or 6 months or 1 year, is going to really impact. It's very unknown, and I don't know when we come back to civilization, whether we will learn to cross the road properly. I don't know. People, whether they can drive cars properly, I don't know, because suddenly everyone has forgotten civilization. So just adding that aspect.
So I think now we have completed the time, and we have kind of, I think, taken up a lot of questions, had some excellent excellent interaction. So I would really, I know we can go on, and I'm sure the participants also would like to be there, but I think we have taken enough time of our panelists, and we've had some, I think, wonderful conversations. We had a plethora of questions. We've tried to answer many, but I'm sure many have been left also unanswered. So Revathi, Francis, thank you for your fantastic interaction here. And I would like to thank the participants for some wonderful questions. I do hope that all of you have gone back with understanding. And I would just like to close saying that, yes, what we need to do right now, I think, just to summarize what we've been interacting on, is give ourselves some time, cut some slack for ourselves and for others. Try and focus on some critical thinking. And as small teams together, I think envision a future that is going to be probably much more flexible than the one we have been following. So thank you so much, everyone. And thanks again to the panelists, my dear friends, Francis and Revathi. And I would say, everyone, keep safe and keep well. And I'm sure that we will do everything to ensure that our emotional and mental health is very good in the days and months to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I hope to see a number of you at my workshop on Monday. Would be a pleasure to have you all. Thank you. And
thank you, participants.
Thank you all.
I would just encourage all the participants. Thank you, Francis, Revathi, you're welcome to leave. The participants, I would please encourage you